Hey, it's Thursday night at 8 o'clock, time for Cinema Hits and Misses. I'm Dawn.
And I'm John.
You tuned into WMPG 90.9 and WMPG.org. What have we got tonight, John?
So tonight we have two biopics. We have Loving, the latest film by Jeff Nichols, and Rules Don't Apply, the Howard Hughes biopic, and Warren Beatty, Passion Project. I guess we can start off with Loving.
Yep, and before we do,
Right.
we are live till 8:30 at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. So we open up the discussion after John reads a summary here.
All right, let's get the show on the road. So the story begins in the late 1950s in rural Virginia. We are introduced to Richard Loving and Mildred Jeter, an interracial couple who are deeply in love with each other. Richard takes Mildred out to a spot on an open field and asks her how she feels about it. Turns out that Richard bought the land that they're standing on, and he wants to build a house for their future family. Since interracial marriages were forbidden in Virginia at the time, the couple and Mildred's father head to Washington, D.C. to be legally married. They try to keep their marriage a secret, but somebody within the police department finds out and arrests the couple one night after breaking into their house. The couple is forced to leave the state for 25 years, or that was their sentence, but Virginia is their home, and that's where they want to stay. This is the start of a grueling process as the couple tries to appeal the state to be allowed not only to stay in their home state, but also have their marriage acknowledged there. So Loving is a film directed by Jeff Nichols and stars Joel Edgerton, Ruth Negga, Michael Shannon, Martin Sokas, Nick Kroll, and John Bass II, according to Rotten Tomatoes. And speaking of Rotten Tomatoes, it is 89% and certified fresh, which means a lot of critics liked it. And 79% of audiences liked it.
I know, and we've been kind of waiting for this to come to the area. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I saw the trailer, I thought it'd be good. And, actually, this is my first Jeff Nichols film, but I've heard, great things about him. And I've always been, since watching The Gift, I've been a fan of Joel Edgerton. So I was like, I have to go see this,
Joel Edgerton is one of those actors. He's what they call a leading character actor in a leading man's body. Means that he's more than just a pretty face on screen. And here again, he really shows it. He and both Ruth Negga, as the couple, the Lovings. I don't know about you, John, but for me, this, even though it's a quiet movie, slow paced, the subtleties in this just blew me away.
No, and I actually agree with you that this could have been this huge melodrama, and it could have been. There's so many aspects in there where it could have been that way, but the way it was able to keep it tame, but still keep its dramatic moments when necessary, and not like go over the top. I think that really worked well, and the subtleties within both the lead actors and really all of them, I thought were fantastic. I honestly believe both of them have a shot of being nominated for the Academy Awards. So, I mean, there's something.
And I agree with you. I really hope that this doesn't get lost in the shuffle because it's not an in-your-face film. It's not wide, it's in a kind of like a moderate release, not like a wide release.
Yeah.
And it's very understated, but so true to what I think the characters were, what the real life couple were. I mean, Richard Loving was an unassuming type of guy. He grew, he very white, but grew up with his black neighbors and didn't think anything of, drag racing him, loving, his partner. But of the time, it was illegal, and they thought he was less than human for marrying a black woman. It's such it's people wanted to make this about civil rights, and it was in such, but that's not what the couple wanted. They just wanted to be married and have their family recognized and be in the state with their family.
Yeah, I believe it is like quote in the movie, like, "Can't we just be?"
Right.
And we won't hurt anybody. Just let us be. So yeah, but man, I was trying to think what to say. Now I'm losing my thought. but yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I think, like I said, the subtleties that they do, I think there's some great moments from both of them. So a great example is when they move to Washington, D.C., and it's the first night there, and they're sleeping in their bed, and Mildred is like you can see on her face, and this also helps with the sound design as well, because you hear like the urban sounds, like the cars and all that, and you can tell that she's just not comfortable with that. Like she's not a city person. She wants to be in Virginia, where that's where also that's where her family is, but that's also where she's most comfortable. And it's the same really applies. It applies to both, but Richard just deals with it. But you can tell that Mildred really had a hard time with it, and I think just like it was just the little things. I got that just from just a facial expression. So I think it just shows how great both these leads did overall.
And you mentioned being familiar with Joel Edgerton. I mean, he has a breadth of work. Ruth Negga, the only other role that I know her from is Preacher, and it's AMC series, and she's a firebrand in that, in your face character. To see the difference here, to have that very subtle performance, and very much in her gestures and her kind of certainly letting her husband take the lead, while that she would like to pursue the matter, whether she's seeing on TV the burgeoning of civil rights, and she sees the march, which is happening a few miles away from them, but it could have been 100 miles away, as she says in this. So she's if either of them is missing in the award season, I think it's a shame. I
think the same would also apply if Jeff Nichols doesn't get nominated for Best Director, or at least for me. The way he was able to handle I think both acting and directing kind of like go hand in hand in some cases. So and he wrote it too.
Yeah,
that was the other thing. So he could very well get a writing nomination as well. I don't know about that. That's the writing's definitely up in the air when it comes to nominations, but acting and directing for sure. Just trying to look back through my notes here. Oh yeah, and see, I completely forgot that Michael Shannon was in it. So when he showed up, like he showed up like at the right time. It was like almost like it cut the tension in the air. It was just like this moment of, I don't know, just trying to think of the word to phrase it, but just like
he broke the tension.
It broke tension, and like I don't know, it made it lighter. I guess it made the tone a bit lighter, and it certainly helped. And then you obviously you have that famous photo from, is it Time? People Time. So. And they pretty much had it like set up, exactly like it, which was neat to see. And they do show that photo at the end of the film as well, just so you have a comparison. You're like, oh, hey, there's the photo, and so that was cool to see. And his character, while brief, like it was just a nice surprise. Michael Shannon, I think he's a great actor, and so it was nice to just see him in there.
Yeah, and the movie that we're currently talking about is Loving. You got Dawn and John here on Cinema Hits and Misses, live till 8:30 tonight. We're at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. Yeah, I mean, Michael Shannon's, again, one of those actors that can either lead or do cameos like this and really enhance a film. Mm-hmm. And I didn't write down the gentleman's name who played the lawyer.
Nick Kroll, I believe.
I'm sorry, the original Southern lawyer. It's an Australian actor.
Yeah. No, I do not have his name on it.
There are a lot of non-U.S. actors in this. I mean, certainly Edgerton and Negga and Sokas and the actor who...
Kroll and Bass.
They're... So Southern accents are very kind of the go-to for Brits or people who have more of the UK accent, but they do it well.
Oh, yeah.
And again, with Martin Sokas, he always seems to play a character that it's like either nasty or snake oil charmer.
Yeah.
And you can see here as the sheriff that he thinks he's right, and he thinks he's educating Richard Loving on the side of right.
Yeah.
And wearing a 21st century filter to a 1950s problem or 1960s problem was very frustrating.
Yeah, and the phrase gets thrown around, I believe, by both Soka's character and Richard Loving's mother. It's like, better. Mm-hmm. It was just like, oh, geez. I mean,
yeah, and one of the things I really liked, attention to detail here, that Jeff Nichols did, was a passage of time with the license plates.
Oh yeah, actually I didn't even notice that, but they did jump through almost 9 years in time, and I think it was clear that there was a jump. I mean, sometimes it was done by kids and their age. But overall, I mean, it didn't feel jumpy, unlike some other film we're going to talk about. But it felt like it flowed well. But speaking of pacing, that is like my one little gripe, but just a minor gripe. The pacing is a little bit inconsistent at times. It might be like a little bit too long on one scene or like too quick on another, but that's pretty much it. If the pacing is the only thing, I feel like I complain about pacing a lot. It's hard to say like what film for me ever had the right pacing, and if I had to ever think about it, I'd have to say Spotlight, but I'd need to watch it again and decide on that. But so yeah, it's just a little bit like slow at points, but otherwise it's still a great film, and if it's in your area, it's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're into a good biopic, but it isn't in your face about it.
Yeah, and this is one that is about humanity and relationships. There are no big stunts or big CGI, so if you can't get to a theater, it's not going to be lessened by home viewing, but certainly being in the theater and being absorbed into this I think is the more I think you'll get a better experience out of that.
Yeah, it will certainly bring you in. It's like an emotionally compelling story, so I don't see why it can't drag people in when they're watching on the big screen. I think it's and the people that at least I was with, they were definitely moved. So pretty much everybody in my theater seemed to enjoy it.
Yeah, because it's playing in a couple of the Cinemagics, and
I don't think it's playing at the Nick.
I don't think it was at the Nick. So it's one that is here limited in some of the screens, but well worth seeking out. And, again, give it time, because it does take time to do the narrative. And that's what these characters did. They endured this near decade of fighting for just the right to be married.
Yeah, and the right to stay in their state, to be acknowledged for that. I'm just see if there's anything else.
It's a little over 2 hours, PG-13, because there are some thematic elements in it. But, certainly nothing that would keep most people away from it.
I guess I'd say just keep an eye out for it come awards season, or come Oscar season, which will be in January when they normally do the nominations. So keep an eye out for both Joel Edgerton and Ruth Negga. I believe they'll definitely get nominations, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think it's, if not Oscar, hopefully Independent Spirit.
Just anything. It was solid acting across the board, so I hope it gets acknowledged.
Yeah, it's a story that needs to be rewarded. Mm-hmm. So what do you say? Go on to Rules Don't Apply?
I'm ready if you are, Dawn.
Okay. Next movie, Rules Don't Apply, opens up in 1958 Los Angeles, where billionaire Howard Hughes, along with being a king of industry, is one of the reigning powers in cinema, or so a lot of people think. He's taken his business acumen, along with a genius for design, and is in the midst of building a better bosom support system for one of his more famous actresses. Along with the known female Hollywood legends, he's got a stable of up-and-coming talent that he keeps tabs on, with individual drivers, classes to build skills, and paychecks delivered via envelopes dangled out of windows, like some kind of bait-and-fish analogy. Virtuous Marla Mabry and her skeptical mother travel all the way from rural Virginia to screen test for a movie. They're assigned to a fresh-faced driver, Frank Forbes, who's told about Mr. Hughes' number one rule: no employees allowed to have any kind of relationship with any of the contract actresses. Well, Virtuous Marla and Smitten Frank seem to have an instant attraction, both naive to the mores of Hollywood and struggling to balance their religious backgrounds with the excesses of this artificial environment. As time passes, both Marla and Frank are drawn into Hughes' weird world as their paths continue to cross in separate and unexpected ways. This life turns into a bit of a rabbit hole for the young but growing ever-experienced weary pair of outsiders. Will they find their way in the midst of the glitter, or will, following the odd and often insane rules that Hughes employs, challenge their values and sanity? John, what do you think of Rules Don't Apply?
Oh boy. First of all, I'm going to say I didn't really do too much research into this film. So I only learned just recently that this is actually a biopic. When I left the theater, I thought, there's no way this is real. This is definitely fiction. And that Howard Hughes is not a real person. Well, I guess I was wrong. That being said, though, I mean, we're talking about this as a film. I will say, I think you can definitely tell. I know this was Warren Beatty's like passion project, so to speak. I don't know how long ago he wanted to actually make it, but you could tell at least that the actors were giving it their all, especially Warren Beatty. Like he was in it for sure. He was probably the most interesting character to watch throughout the entire thing because he was just so zany and frantic and just all over the place. And that the film kind of reflects that a bit in the editing. Like the editing is just a bit jumpy. Actually, not just a bit; it's a lot jumpy. It just cuts everywhere. And some scenes will be like they don't really serve that much of a purpose. I felt like. Especially some of the scenes during the beginning, like when Marla and her mother are in the house having dinner, and they just say like one thing, and they just cuts, and then something like Frank and Matthew Broderick's character, I don't remember his name, but
LeVar Mathis.
LeVar. So Frank and LeVar talking, like not even 30 seconds cuts, and it took me out of it a lot. Just trying to see what else. I felt like the story was trying to build to something, and it never really did. It just kind of like flatlined at one point. It was just like, let's just have him go zany now. So this is like not knowing that it was actually real prior. I'm like, this is just getting ridiculous. But yeah, overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this.
Yeah, didn't mention this at the top. It is a Warren Beatty production. Warren Beatty starring as Howard Hughes, Lily Collins, and Alden Ehrenreich as the two young lovers, or lovers-to-be Marla Mabry and Frank Forbes. And it employs a lot of seasoned talent in here with not a lot to do at points. I mean, there are some actors, there's some talent here that come on the screen, and I got kind of excited to see them, and then I was like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, or they would even, like Alec Baldwin was probably not even in the movie for like 5 minutes, probably. That's one thing. Geez, I mean... You know,
Martin Sheen is one of my favorite actors, and he was there for just a brief walk-in as kind of talking about Hughes' sanity, and that's probably, not knowing the background of Hughes, where might have... Hughes was a very challenging man by all accounts, and I guess that opening quote about not always printing the truth, the story is sometimes better than the truth, that was like there's something in the opening line. And, you know, Hughes was losing his sanity, and there are lots of, there are movies about him, and, you know, Beatty was in Hollywood at the time. Beatty was a Lothario at the time, so those photos that they showed were him dating some of the actresses that they were pretending that Hughes, Hughes also dated. So, and it was Jane Russell, and I can't remember the movie, but they were trying to design a bra for her for the movie just to show off her bosoms to advantage, you know. Yeah. But they were almost like airplane cone. Airplane
cones, yeah.
And, you know, that's the conversation that's in the background with a scene where Matthew Broderick and Alden Ehrenreich are waiting to talk to Hughes. So those little bits of lore, and the Spruce Goose was the plane, the wooden plane that he almost got sued for its inability to fly, but he did actually get it to fly.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just crazy, really. Like the revelation of this, at least for me, it was like, oh, okay, this is all real. That's nuts. But even still, like as a film, it's all over the place. I guess it fits Hughes' character, but beyond that, I feel like this felt really divided, or like it felt like a couple different films happening at once. You have the beginning, which seemed to like show like this section of old Hollywood, and even like some of the shots were done like in like super grain, almost like if they were shot in the 50s themselves, but then they would cut back and it would just be like just HD again. You're like, wait, what? I almost kind of
was archival.
Yeah, okay, that might be it then. It was like the jump for that just seemed, I understood like why they were doing that, just to get the setting, but it almost seemed a bit jarring. I kind of wish there would have been some consistency there. Like maybe they should have just done it like super grainy. Maybe it would have helped give more the illusion that this is like an old Hollywood kind of tale to a point. And so there's like this thing about old Hollywood. There's this romance that happens. I guess I don't
Possibly.
know. Like they did a good job, I thought, in the beginning with that, but then it just goes away, and I think it doesn't help when they jump through time. And I guess maybe that's how it happened. I don't really know, but.
Yeah. And the movie that we're currently talking about is Rules Don't Apply, currently playing in theaters. We've got Don and John and Cinema Hits Misses. We're live till 8:30 at 780-4909, at 780-4909. I think that's one of the discussion points, John, that for this movie is that it does seem like a couple of movies trying to fit into one. You know, it's Beatty trying to do something about Howard Hughes, but not really do a biopic. More tell it through the story of these two young, naive newbies to Hollywood. But, that narrative doesn't get enough support in trying to balance the Hughes part. So I think part of it is the editing. And you talked about the rapid editing, but it's a how do you put the story together?
Yeah, I think it was a difficult script, and even then sometimes like some of the writing choices just seemed off. I know they were trying for some comedic things, and they did at points, and I think most of that just came from Hughes himself. But other than that, like I don't know, maybe the humor just didn't hit me as much. I don't know how you feel, but
yeah, I mean, there have been much better movies about Howard Hughes. On the comedic side, there's a movie that you should definitely check out, Melvin and Howard.
Will do.
It's Howard escaping his handlers, because where I think this fits is at a certain point, and we see it in this movie, Hughes is distrusting of his business managers, and because someone's going to take him up on sanity charges, and he gets married. I mean, that's part of what happened with Hughes, and at some point it turned into what was called the Mormon Mafia. So when he eventually moved to Las Vegas, the staff around him were primarily of the Mormon bankers, and they put another barricade around him. So you see these ever-increasing barricades around him. We see it a little bit in this with the chauffeurs. It gets even more wilder and weirder later in his life. And I think for storytelling, I think it's better that they didn't go there in this story. But that, and also there's a movie, The Aviator, which came out probably 10 years ago with Leonardo DiCaprio, which again shows Hughes from his youth inheriting the business and building up. So, there are better movies about Howard Hughes out there. And I think Beatty knew that, but he still wanted his hands in it. But there's one movie I tell you not to watch, which always gets associated with Beatty, and it's a movie called Ishtar that he did with Dustin Hoffman, which was a Middle Eastern travelogue, which didn't work. He has a certain style in storytelling, which I think either resonates like it would in Reds, which Russian Revolution, which kind of worked. It's a long, rambling film, but it worked. This didn't work for me.
Yeah, and even when I think they were trying to go for style, it didn't always pay off, especially because of that, it feels like three different movies. Like in the beginning, they make Hughes out to be this very like mysterious man. They have him in the shadows a lot. It's almost like noir lighting at points, and it was interesting. So I'm like, okay, is he just gonna be like this guy, like this head honcho dude in the shadows or whatever? And they just all of a sudden he's out in the open and he's crazy. Like I don't know. And there's also going back to like the camera work and lighting. There's this one shot. I don't know why it sticks out in my mind, but it's Howard Hughes sitting in a bed, and it feels like they just put a light right by it. It doesn't feel like it's natural to the scene. Like, oh, they just need to shine it because it's way too dark. And probably the argument people are going to make for that is like, well, there's a TV down there. But I'm like, but it's over there. How is it shining on his face perfectly in his eyes? That's just like a little nitpick I'm going to point out, but it bothered me a lot.
Well, I mean, for us being people who work with lighting for various reasons. I mean, for me, his there's the lighting of Annette Bening when she first comes to the house, that it's perfectly set on her eyes and cheekbones. So it's almost like an oval across her face, whereas Lily Collins was a natural, like an interior natural daylight. But when I went to Annette Bening, it was this nice soft oval around her face.
Okay.
It's like, all right, that's a bit much. I know it's your wife, because we had two married couples in this movie. Of course, Warren Beatty and Annette Bening. And then Ed Harris and his wife, Amy Madigan, played the parents of the fiancé that Frank Forbes had back in the...
Yeah, I completely forgot they were in the movie.
Right. I mean, yeah, so this has, again, the stars, Warren Beatty, Lily Collins, Alden Ehrenreich, Matthew Broderick, which we see predominantly, and Candice Bergen. But then Alec Baldwin, Annette Bening, Haley Bennett, Candice Bergen, Dabney Coleman, Paul Sorvino. He was in a TV scene. Martin Sheen, Ed Harris. Steve Coogan, who is a wonderful British comic, played this absurd pilot scene.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember that scene. Jeez,
it's like, what a waste of talent.
That's how it feels like this entire movie.
Right. So, for this, unless you're really in love with old Hollywood and some of the lore about this for me is a wait and see at home.
Oh, it's an avoided for me. Like, unless you're truly interested, it felt like, so there's three main characters pretty much, and trying to, like, juggle and intermesh those storylines didn't always work, especially because then after a while the focus shifts more on one character than the other, and it just doesn't work. It's a bit disappointing, to say the least. But granted, I didn't go into this movie with that much high expectations in the first place. I went in blind, but even then I kind of left with a sigh. So
yeah, for me, it's Alden Ehrenreich is going to be the young version of Han Solo. Yes. And he's been in a couple movies that I've really liked. So to see him in this, I felt very disappointed for him. I was like, I'm rooting for this kid to grow into his acting chops.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, not to knock the actors, but I actually thought they were probably the best part of the movie. They were giving it their all. Yeah. It's just what's around them wasn't good at all, at least in my opinion. So yeah, I hope they find better work.
Yeah, and that flapping you hear in the background, it's both of us are our hands in the air, frustrated with this, because I think there could have been a better movie here.
There definitely could have been. I would love to look at the script and try to rearrange it.
Yeah, and we know that December is a month full of some good and exciting, anticipating movies that we're hoping to see.
There's a lot to look forward to in the next few months.
Yeah, so, I mean, next week, Gail and Terry are in. We know that they have a couple of choices of interesting films. We're not sure what they're going to do. I mean, there's Nocturnal Animals that's opening up, Miss Sloane.
Office Christmas Party, I think, is another one that's opening up this weekend, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get Manchester by the Sea yet, which we've all been anticipating.
Yeah, I know. The Nick changed it on their website, and I'm a little bit bummed. But Cinemagic said that La La Land was supposed to show up tomorrow, but it isn't. I guess that's just, I don't know, that's weird, but whatever. I'm excited to see Nocturnal Animals tomorrow, so.
So next week, Gail and Terry will be back on the 22nd. I know we're going to have Rogue One. Dun, dun, dun. And if Manchester by the Sea makes it, we'll do that. If not, maybe a Collateral Beauty or something else that opens up. But we'll have some movie choices for you on the 22nd to take you through your holiday weekend. And in the meantime, we're rounding down to 8:30. And Justine's going to turn on the heat with Between the Notes.